Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high.
Daniel H. Burnham, early 20th century Cleveland urban planning director. Cleveland has a long history of making big plans. In the early 1900s, Cleveland became one of the first U.S. cities to establish a planning commission. Led by Director Daniel Burnham, Cleveland developed a vibrant public square that served as a center of commerce and culture. In the 1930s, Cleveland added the Terminal Tower to its already impressive resume. The tower quickly became the symbol of the city. It also developed a railroad network that supported its tremendously flourishing industrial base. By the 1940s, Cleveland was the 8th largest city in the United States, but challenges were looming on the horizon. In the 1940s and 50s, highways spread across the city, paving the way for decentralization. As factories and businesses left the city, people followed. Suburban population skyrocketed, while city tax revenues plummeted. At the same time, millions of Southern African Americans migrated to northern cities to look for jobs. In 1950, Cleveland created a general plan for city development to address these changing social and economic realities. The general plan was the largest urban renewal plan in the country, covering more than 6,000 square acres of land, 12% of the total city area. One of the major projects of this massive urban renewal effort was Erieview. Cleveland hoped Erieview would launch the city into a new era of growth and prosperity, but it ended up doing just the opposite. Erieview is a classic example of the economic and social failure wrought on American cities by urban renewal. In 1959, the Cleveland Development Foundation announced preliminary plans for a project called Erieview. Before the project began, the 163-acre project area represented everything experts thought was wrong with the American city. Despite a prime location in the center of Cleveland's downtown, the area consisted mostly of blighted buildings and worn-down manufacturing facilities. Erieview called for the demolition of all but 11 of the 237 buildings in the area. It was a classic example of creative destruction. In order to renew, Cleveland first thought it had to destroy. To justify this destruction, Cleveland claimed that many of these buildings were substandard and constituted hazards of health and safety. In reality, the buildings were demolished to provide enough land to attract new development. Architect I.M. Pei wanted to revitalize the area with 30 new buildings. The plan called for 12 apartment complexes and 8 office buildings. The tall building in the center of this picture is the Erieview Tower, which would serve as a focal point of the project. The figure 8-like buildings were supposed to be apartment complexes. The plans for Erieview were influenced by ideals of modern architecture. Above is a vision of the contemporary city as conceived by Le Corbusier in the early 1920s. One notices immediate parallels in the style of buildings and the layout of the city. The goal of Erieview was to reverse the urban exodus to the suburbs and bring residents, businesses, and their tax dollars back into the city. Not surprisingly, many of the proposed buildings were residential. Erieview's development was a two-phase process. The first phase would involve public and commercial development, like the Erieview Tower. The second part of the project, the area east of 14th Street, would be mainly residential in nature. The official price tag to get the project rolling through the land acquisition and planning was nearly $60 million, but the total construction costs would exceed $240 million. By 1961, the majority of properties had been leveled, and Cleveland was anxiously anticipating the arrival of the dream of Erieview.